Okay, so for the first week of class, we're going to be looking at Chapter 3 in the Guthrie textbook, and then we're going to be looking for some of the other chapters in the Brimley, Verstegen, and Poston textbook. So the first part of this class is what school business officials do. The purpose of this class is two different things. It's really to show what superintendents need to know about school finance. This book right here is what superintendents need to know about school finance. This book is what school business administrators do. There is not a book that exists that merges these together. It does not exist yet in education. Nobody has written it, nobody has done it. But in this state, your requirement is that you have to know what's in this, and you have to know what's in this. That's why we have two legitimately expensive textbooks for the course, because we're taking the superintendent stuff the superintendent would know about finance, and we're also taking the school business administrator requirement as well. So that's the point. This text is the point of the Guthrie text. If you're going to take this, use it, and learn from it, this textbook more is if you are working in a small school district where they don't have positions, where basically you're the transportation director, you're the school business administrator, you're the food service person. This book teaches you what the business administrator has to do about this. This book is the exact opposite of this. This book is what superintendents should know about all of this stuff. So I've been selective on the chapters. If I stay in higher education, my goal is actually to design a text that covers both of these, because it doesn't exist. There's not money in school finance, but it's something that, you know, if you have two primary texts, it's what it could be. The other course that we offer at Oklahoma State that I want to teach is this school facilities class. It's been on the books, but it hasn't run in 20 years. You know, we're going to get to that point where we offer it and run it, and as a directed reading, maybe in a year or so, it might benefit some of you, but by then, hopefully all of you will be graduated and on your way to bigger, better, greater things. But the facilities class is going to be something that offers. If you want it, we could run it. If not, you know, this is something I want to teach and something I enjoy teaching. So this chapter really goes over what school business officials deal with in their positions. This is worth a read. I will argue that the school business official, outside of your most prolific high school principal, is the most important hire that you make as a superintendent. I think the high school principal still is the most important decision you make. The high school principal is the person that is going to be in the news, they're going to be in the media. That's, as a superintendent, that's the number one most important hire. Your high school principal is number one. Number two, I think, is the school business administrator, because they're the one that's most likely to get you fired, next to the high school principal. If you make a bad business school administrator hire, you could potentially lose your job. So this chapter goes over what the business administrator does in their position more than anything else. So the topics, once again, these are taken directly from the textbook. You can look over the topics on your own, but these are the main ideas. They're going to be covered in this chapter, the 8 ideas that we'll look at. But, you know, one of the things that I always say is that you've had me for one of 3 courses. You've had me for work theory, you've had me for leadership theory, or you've had me for school reform. Educational administration changes constantly, and we've looked at that in every single one of these classes. There are different educational management frames, which I'm going to address on the next slide. And this is sort of, you know, the direction that we're looking at in schools. So when you're looking at stuff that I'm going to have on the quiz, you can put a star by this. This will be the stuff that I cover, but it'll be the stuff that's on the numbered slides. The number one most important thing in schools in terms of business management and finance is the strategy that you have to improve your organization. You have to understand your organization in the external environment. The external environment can be the organizations that are your rivals. It can be other businesses that are in the district. For those of you that are in urban schools, it can be the charter schools that are potentially going to take your money that you expected to have to invest in your public school. So you understanding your organization and where your talent is will help you perform better in your organization. You need to know what the good schools around you are doing and what the poor schools are doing so that you can make strategic decisions. So I always say that succession planning means everything. You need to know your personnel and where your internal strengths are within the organization. If you have somebody that's a rock star in your organization, what should you do to keep them? Well, how do you keep somebody happy?
Hopefully pay them.
You pay them. You pay them more money. You give them more money than they're going to get elsewhere, and if you can't pay them, what do you do?
Give them a planning period that...
Some sort of fringe benefit that they want. For some people it might be a planning period. For some people it might be Fridays off. You obviously can't do that with teachers, but in central administration you can be flexible. An extra week of vacation time. You have to have a plan to prepare for change and understanding who could potentially be the leaders in your organization. So as central administrators, you are not going to be an expert in every subject area. And it's difficult for people that are building principals to think that they're going to stay an expert in every subject area. Sure, we all know what good teaching looks like, but you know, the example that I always use is I don't necessarily know what good teaching looks like in a music classroom. I don't know what good teaching looks like specifically pedagogically in a physical education classroom. Some of you do, some of you don't. So you need to not be an expert in every subject area, but understand who is and hire the right people to get you the strongest results in your organization. If you're hiring a business manager, what is the ideal profile of a business manager? Who do you want to hire as your business manager in your district? What does their education look like? The dream business manager should have what degrees?
Say either accounting or finance?
Yes. And they should have their undergrad actually in the dream business manager.
Education.
In education. Your dream business manager has an MBA and they have an undergrad in education because then they understand how finance or accounting impact education. In a larger school district, my belief is accounting. In a smaller school district, my belief is finance. Why? Larger district, accounting over finance.
Okay,
Hands down. Smaller, finance.
Because in a larger district, that is the thing that will get you into trouble. You're dealing with
Yeah.
millions of dollars. And the leakage is unbelievable.
And if one thing goes missing, is it going to take a while for it to be caught?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why in a larger district. Why finance in a smaller district?
They're going to have to do more responsibilities. They're going to be responsible for not just the accounting part, but the...
Not just line budgeting, but
Yeah.
strategic planning and
Planning
future
and all that.
investments. Smaller school districts in this state, which shocks me, rely a lot on long-term investments in managing bonds and in capital projects over 30 to 50 years instead of 10 to 15 like in other states. Texas, comparing Texas to Oklahoma, you're looking at most bonds and capital expenditures that are budgeted from a 10 to 15 year period. In Oklahoma, it's 30 to 50. In smaller districts, that means that kids' kids are going to be paying for the decisions that you make as a superintendent. So in my ideal world, the education system of somebody is an undergrad in education and a master's degree in business, but accounting in a larger district and finance in a smaller district, if I'm picking my dream business manager. What other elements am I looking for in a business manager? There's something else distinct that I want.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking critical thinker, decision maker, strategic planner.
So strategic planner, what would I want out of somebody to be a strategic planner? What would I want that business manager to do?
Someone that has vision, can see
See down the road.
Yeah.
And that lives in the district so that they can see down the road. In my dream world, that business manager lives in the school district.
So they are invested in the
Because
decisions.
they're invested in the decisions. I would want my business manager to be an internal hire that lives in the school district. In a dream world too, they would have dealt with one of the businesses in the community. But that is my dream profile of a business manager. If I'm picking what I want them to be, that's the knowledge that I want them to have, and I want them to be proper hire. So one of the things that you have to be able to do is superintendents, you have to be able to take risks and be okay with taking risks. in terms of finance, superintendents have to be coached well. Superintendents aren't well versed in school finance because you get basically a one and done shot at it and you learn trial by error. So you have to have a good hire, or you have to be able to take smart risks that benefit the district. One of the challenges that we're going to talk about later in this class that I really want to stress is the superintendent that comes in and pays for the sins that somebody else did 20 or 30 years ago. And you might end up as a superintendent and you might be the most unpopular person because of the way that an investment went or a bond went before you even started in education. And you have to be aware of that and know how to detect that. I will go over that with you and I will show you how to do it. You know, easy, the integration, we say this in every class. Anything that you do related to, you know, anything you do related to leadership, you should be able to integrate it into, you need to be able to integrate it into everything that you do. So, business administrators did not exist until the 1920s. We had superintendents and principals in schools pretty much forever. If we were going over a history of education, you know that the superintendency started in the mid-1800s and principals started in the late 1700s. Business managers did not exist until the 1920s. The principal was the business manager. The superintendent was the business manager. So they were in charge of functions within the school district, and they're the ones that made all the decisions. So here's the problem. This is the fundamental issue and the challenge that comes with this. Because it is a new position, and it is a new position, even though it's 100 years old, that's a new position in education. That means that the business manager has been at the mercy of school boards since their existence, because they didn't exist prior to school boards. School boards invented the position, so they are always at the mercy of school boards and board decisions. So this hiring decision is so freaking important because they're going to be the person that really is your buffer between you and the school board, because they have to have a good relationship with the school board. Why I think an internal hire that lives in the district would be awesome, and why they also have to have a background in education as well. That's the dream hire for a business manager, and it's why it's so important. So what do they think about? What are the main issues that they have to think about? Well, they have to find cost effectiveness of everything. They have to be able to come up with alternatives. They have to see how they can invest in the district, in differences in alternative decisions, and what that's going to end up looking like in the future. So we've already said this, but the hire is everything, and keep that in mind. Make the right hire. So we pulled a description from our textbook of what a business manager looks like, and there were 3 that they gave me, and I went with this one because I was really bothered by this one. Notice what the business manager is doing. One of the biggest lines down here is supervises director of child nutrition. So the business manager is in charge of child nutrition. So for this district in San Alameda Unified School District, what would you expect that business manager to do? They have to know at least food services and health pretty well. Nothing really related to transportation in this particular district. So their job duties are going to differ depending on the district and depending on the organization and depending on the personnel that already exists there. So an operational definition of business managers and what they do. I like this, but I'm more interested in this. This is what the business manager should technically do in every single district. In your ideal world, this is what should be consistently done for business managers. Number 1, they oversee the transportation department. So many mistakes are made with transportation. They should be responsible for the transportation department. The person that's planning the bus routes probably does not have a business background. So they should be the one that figures out how school buses are housed, how they're outsourced. Later in the course, we're going to talk about, the effectiveness of adding seat belts to the bus. How many of you have seat belts on your buses? How about on the mini buses, seat belts?
Special ed buses.
Special ed buses do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're getting to that point. Do you know how much the cost would be to add seat belts to the buses? You're better off trashing the buses almost completely and building new. Just the cost of adding seat belts to meet federal legislation and requirements. That's how serious they are. So, my opinion, transportation is important. Obviously, payroll, budgeting, and accounting, like we said, this is where they're gonna get in trouble, this is where the problems are gonna happen, so that's important as well. Human resources management, most of you work in districts that have a human resources director, but the business manager has to be the one that understands what bargaining looks like and benefit management looks like. Human resources managers might be able to tell you what good benefits are, but is a human resource manager going to understand what an early out is? What is an early out? When a district says we're offering an early out, what does that normally entail?
Retirement
Retirement
incentive,
incentive.
paid
What-
healthcare.
What is the normal retirement incentive in the state?
5 years.
5 years paid health care to get you to retire early. And what's the goal of it? To take your health care up to the time you hit Medicare, and that's what you're crossing your fingers of. Does this cost a district a lot of money? Significant.
I think so, yes.
Significant. Especially if your district doesn't, if your district doesn't do this massive jump step and every teacher's pretty much making the same, it's a huge expense. I don't expect the human resource manager to know how to do this. The business manager needs to understand it. Facility management, they have to understand security staffing. This Guthrie textbook really stresses school security, which that was kind of odd to me, but it's something that the business manager is responsible for. So, my goal is, with this textbook, is really to talk about these different types of things and how they can be integrated into a school system. So, on a quiz, if I say, what should the school business administrator do? Their goal is to save the district money. The school business administrator should save the district money. Pay as long of a grace period as you possibly can. Put your money into CDs and investments whenever you can. If there's money sitting around in the district that's not going to be used, that should be invested. Debt issues should be timed appropriately, and they should be done not to hurt anybody. Insurance. You want to get as many people on insurance as possible if you're running the school's business. Why do you want the maximum number of people on the insurance?
Does it cost less the more people you have on?
The more people you have, the less it costs. So that is the goal. If you have a friend that's an architect, how can that help you?
Lower costs.
Lower costs, and they're also going to tell you if.
There's structural damage, if there's just problems.
Realistic.
Yeah, they're going to be realistic, and they're going to tell you, if there's damage or if something's actually going to be an issue. So, what are their skill sets? Well, this is this is part of the class too. They're going to go over the 3 different skill sets that a business manager should have. So, technical. Budget development, purchasing, and accounting are the technical skills that a business manager should have. Superintendents should understand that this is a technical position first and an educational position second. If the business manager just doesn't understand development, purchasing, and accounting, they should not be in the role. So yes, their graduate degree should be in business, not in education.
This may be a dumb question, but when you say business manager, you're not talking about like the chief financial officer, are you?
Your district would have a CFO.
Okay.
Because you're in a bigger district. In a lot of districts, the business manager is the business manager, and they are the CFO.
Okay.
So their duties are shared, and that's kind of, like I said, this book, the main point of this book is this is what the CFO should know or what the school business manager should know. The other book, the one that we're going to spend most time in, is what the superintendent should know about school finance.
Okay, so a smaller district would not have a CFO,
No.
they would just have business manager.
One business manager,
Okay.
one person, normally with an MBA, who makes the decisions.
Okay.
Districts with a CFO, a lot of times sometimes that CFO makes as much as the superintendent makes. But, you're dreaming, especially in a state that has so many school districts, to think that every district can afford to pay somebody that much money. Especially when the business manager fails or the CFO fails, the superintendent's the one that's held accountable as well. So that can be a challenging problem as well. Business managers have to be key social wizards because they have to keep the school board happy. If the school board is kept happy and the school board goes along with their decisions, then the superintendent and principal aren't overly held accountable, because then they can say, well, the school board voted on this. I didn't push this through. So that business manager better be a social wizard. That's another thing too, We need to think about ways that we can really work with future business administrators to make sure